Right, so we get started then. Just wanted to kind of put a bit of context to these webinar series as we just at the beginning. So we're going to be just asking a few questions to, well, today we've got Martin, who's the CEO of the Money Group. Going to get a few questions out there, going to find out a little bit more about his journey, about the successes he's had, and more importantly, I think about the failures. So we're going to really, we're going to learn from, you know, some of the speed bumps that some of you guys are going to hit along the way as well. And any sort of top tips as well for brokers. So yes, Martin from the CEO Group. So I'll start with just tell us a little bit about your journey, if that's all right, Martin. So kind of where you came from and how you've gone from one-man band to DA to where you are now.
Yeah, well, thanks for the opportunity to come on and talk about myself. I never need to be asked twice to do that, Marcus, so it's greatly appreciated. The journey is always, well, that's a, you know, I could be here for an hour just doing the first year. I mean, I'm fortunate and unfortunate that I started very, very early on. I think a lot of people fail to realise how young this industry actually is. I mean, I started my career in 1991. It was a very different industry back then. If you think where we are today, the broking community has probably got maybe 12 to 15,000 people in it. When I started, there was 250,000 registered financial advisors, and I use the word financial advisors very loosely back then. You're all 21 years old, and you know, it was all about selling endowments back in 1991, so we weren't really financial advisors. But it was an interesting schooling because there was absolutely no success back then. You joined when you were self-employed, and I joined, actually I didn't realise, they did such a good job on me in the recruitment process, I didn't realise I was self-employed until after about 3 months, when I didn't get my pay slip. Then they finally
come in.
Say again?
They're waiting for that wage to come in, looking at the back.
Still waiting now, 30 years later. Yeah, and hasn't started me spending though. So, you know, it was just very, very different industry. But I think it's quite important that brokers who are maybe new into the industry today, they realise and maybe hunt out, and this is the first tip for a lot of people, is go and find the people that were around 25, 30 years ago and understand the history of the industry that you work in, because you can learn an awful lot from doing that, and good things and bad things, you know. I mean, again, what a lot of brokers maybe don't realise now is that a lot of people died along the way for this industry, and I don't mean literally, I mean figuratively. Absolutely, there was probably, you know, there's been an 80% drop in headcount in brokers, because you get that natural evolutionary evolvement when, I mean, there was no regulation in 91, and then some regulation came along in 95, and then some in 90. And every time that happens, you lose the old boys, the dinosaurs, the dodgy ones. And I think now the industry is in a very, very good position, but don't ever forget some of the work that went on along the way to get us here. I think it's quite important.
Yeah, that makes sense. So tell me about where you are now then. What's with the Money Group? What's the situation there? Because I know you've obviously got the DA side and then your network as well. So tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I mean, we're quite a diversified model and quite a diversified brand. So what we're all about is trying to back the broker. So if there's one thing that I think I would probably do differently now, is I would have started this journey a lot sooner. And what I would have done is I would have found out how this industry operates and how it works. I was speaking to a broker earlier on today, just on a recruitment call, came from a completely different recruitment advisor. I do apologise, Marcus. But he didn't understand how the industry works. And I found that a little bit frustrating, that a lot of brokers out there take on face value what they see, and they don't question that. Now, I'm quite an inquisitive stroke nosy individual, so I will always go and poke around and actually try and find the answer I'm looking for, rather than take on face value what I hear. So I think I would definitely done that a little bit differently, and I would have found out how it works, and I think I would have got a bit angrier a bit sooner had I done that, and that might have put the Money Group on a bit more of a journey that's slightly longer than it is on now. So where we are now, we're quite sorry.
So when you say how it works, what do you think people are getting wrong then in regards to not looking into it?
Because we speak to a lot of brokers come to us, and they don't read their contracts. That's a pretty fundamental basic point. hello, I'd like to leave my network. I'd like to leave my national. Oh, okay. What's your network? What's your contract say? Oh, I don't know. I can't remember where it is. So just very basic things about the restrictions that, you know, the authorization process is complicated in this industry. DA, RI, AR, whole of market, restricted panel, trading styles, you name it, it's overcomplicated. And people think they can just unplug one authorization and then plug it into another one. Doesn't work like that. And that's the bit that they don't understand as well, the implications of building up an indemnity pot with their network or their national, and they think they can just walk away or just assume that someone will know about that cross. You know, it's a complex market whereby you're building up six-figure debt in some respects, and it's a chain around your neck. So just understanding how the industry works, what it actually means. I mean, I've spoken to journalists who report on our industry, and one of them didn't even know what a procuration fee was. So in terms of, you know, knowledge within the industry, it's very, very thin, I would suggest. Yeah. And I don't think people understand how it works, what goes on. And I think it wouldn't hurt people to understand that a little bit more. Educating themselves about the industry they work in rather than taking it for granted is probably time well spent, I would think.
Yeah, I suppose it's a similar thing with us when we get it, where people don't know who owns their clients. Simple things like that, because they haven't checked their contracts, so they don't know when they're leaving somewhere. Oh, who owns it? That's a massive part. You're building up a business for someone else.
The broker will assume, I mean, I have a lot of fights about this over the years. The broker doesn't own the client, the regulator doesn't own the client, the bank doesn't own the client, the network doesn't own the client. No one owns a client. Okay, I am on paper a client for a number of organisations. No one owns me. If I want to change my accountant, I will. If I want to change my bank account, I will. If I want to change my mortgage, I will. So I think the sooner the industry moves away from fighting over a point that actually no one can ever win, the better. But you're right. A lot of brokers go, "That's my client." But
yeah, I see it on the flip side. If you're paying for someone's leads, etc., and then they would consider that the company's client, and if you're not, then there's a grey area. But like you say, no one's actually owned other. If someone phones you because they want to speak to you.
It's a pointless argument, and there's enough pointless arguments going on at the moment in the industry and outside of it, not to worry about client ownership. That would be my take.
Yeah. So again, going from, or the other reason, then let's go through the reason. You've got the DA side, and then obviously the TMG and the network side of things at the moment. What's the reason for that step? And are all your brands moving into that?
So what we run, I mean, to me, it makes perfect sense. I mean, maybe someone looking in from the outside might question the model, but it works perfectly in my mind. It works very well for the people that we work with. So I'm a DA principal of London Money. That's my firm. I've been directly authorised for 10 years. Previously, I was part of some large nationals. So I've seen both sides of the fence. So I can argue both sides quite eloquently for a number of hours. And I enjoy being directly authorised. It really suits my personality. I know that I would struggle to work in a corporate entity. I'd probably last half an hour before being summoned into HR for something I've done wrong. So there's no point me looking at that particular route, because I know that's not going to fit my personality. Being directly authorised suits me fine. That's the ownership of the business, the control over the business, the responsibility, the freedom to make my own autonomous business decisions. That suits me down to the ground. But
sorry to jump in, I just wanted to reiterate that, because that's really important to people that are listening. If you don't know what way to go, it really does depend on, like you say, it suits your personality. So I bet that doesn't come even across people's minds when they're thinking about how do we go, where do we go next? Because some will suit a network, and some will suit going DA, and personality people fall into it.
I've probably talked more people out of going DA than talked them into going DA for that exact reason. Just don't. Yeah. It's a bit illusionary. People think it's either something very, very good or something very, very bad. It's actually nothing. It's just a very neutral position, but it's not. It isn't for everybody. So yes, if you've got, we have a number of brands and a number of brand directors that understand that concept, and they've gone directly authorised now. And anyone can pick up the phone to these people. They're very open-minded, very honest, very empathetic. So they'll talk people through their own journey. They'll have no problem discussing that. But it doesn't suit everybody. And I understand that as well. There's a reason why 55% of the brokers are in a network and 45% are directly authorised. The proof of the pudding is right in front of you. So we had to accommodate the people that weren't quite ready to be directly authorised or didn't want the kind of responsibility that comes with being directly authorised. So it made sense to us to look at having a network option. Now, we don't want to grow that to be a Primus or a Sesame or an OpenWork or anything like that. You can run a very good, flexible, profitable network with 25 to 30 good ARs, and that's what we want to look. That's what we want to look to do. The other reason why we did it as well, Marcus, is the FCA is collapsing under its own weight of red tape at the moment. So
I don't know how long it takes at the moment to get someone through, but I know
9 months. 9 months for a direct authorisation application. That's a long time in this industry. Imagine anyone else having to wait 9 months to go and join another employer. It doesn't happen, but it does in our industry. So we're losing people because the lead time is too long. Whereas appointing an AR as a network is probably a 6 to 8 week process. So that's better. So we can bring people into the network. What we can see happening over time is some of those ARs will be better suited or more in tune with the management to go directly authorised. So we can.
I was going to say that because it's still part of the same group, is it? It's an easy move over, is it? To go
absolutely.
To the
and conversely, Marcus, we might have some DA firms that go, do you know what? Actually, I'd rather go back under a network. So because, and you'll know this, that the two hardest things in our industry are recruitment and then retention. All right. So you go through the heartache of recruiting someone and the heartache of leaving them. I think with our model, we're trying to give everyone options. And I think that's quite crucial in an industry that doesn't really have many options. So having a network and a DA proposition and understanding both sides of that gives us a good commercial advantage. Yeah,
that makes sense. I was speaking to someone about this the other day, actually, another broker who was saying a very similar thing in regards to if you've got another option later on, that they're taking on employed people all the time, but if you're then if you've got a self-employed option later on, or you've got a model where they can go off and do their own thing, then you're not going to lose people at the back end, apart from the people that want to go off and run their own business, and there's nothing.
Well, we actually, we do actively encourage people to leave us and run their own business, providing they kind of stay in our network as part of the money group. You know, and I've got no problem. I mean, I'm a real advocate of getting out there and doing it yourself and being your own boss. So if someone says to me, and I've got someone leaving London Money to go off and do that, they're not going to get any resistance from me to do that. They'll get a lot of encouragement from me to do that, because that's what I would want to hear if I was in their shoes. Whereas some of the mentality, and we see it, it's horrendous, is that, you know, the moment you want to leave, you're, you know, persona non grata. You know, I've seen people have their emails cut off within the hour, clients hanging. You know, belongings thrown in a cardboard box and put out by the bins. I mean, you know, there's no need for that in what is meant to be a forward-thinking professional industry, but it does go on.
Yeah, I think that's people taking it personally. You know, you just get people up and out as soon as they can. But yeah, it's crazy. So, so to guys who are kind of starting out at the moment, then starting new. I mean, we kind of touched on it the other day when we were having a conversation, and I didn't even think about it. There are guys now who are maybe 6 or 7 years into their careers, and they haven't actually seen any changes yet. They haven't seen some of the things that you've seen in regards to kind of recessions and base rate ridiculous changes, and it's been, I don't want to knock people that start at the moment, but it's been relatively easy at the moment. I mean, I know we had the pandemic, but that ended up being quite advantageous to a lot of people. So how do you prepare people for that? What things are going to happen in the future they haven't seen yet? I think it's difficult to.
It's a really good point, and I don't think we really touch on it enough in the industry. We are in a very benign environment and have been for a number of years. The pandemic, you know, choose my words carefully, has been very good for the industry. Very, very good for the industry. I'm not saying by design, by default. I was speaking to someone about this the other day, and I was saying that, you know, how busy everything is, and he said, "Oh, you know, you've dodged the bullet then." You know, as in, you know, somewhat spitefully, because his industry hasn't dodged that particular bullet. But then I kind of reframed him that, you know, between 2008 and 2012, my income halved, and there was absolutely nothing I could do about that. That was, you know,
I don't think people appreciate how, like you say, advantageous this period was when you got hit by the last one. It's always, you know, lucky them, isn't it? Lucky that angels didn't get hit, but.
Yeah, and you know, it's in the same way that tourism and hospitality have shut down in the pandemic, the mortgage market shut down in the credit crunch. And we have got short-term memories, but again, brokers should go out and speak to those guys that have been there and done that, and they'll learn an awful lot. I've seen regulatory changes, significant regulatory changes. I started in a career whereby we didn't have to tell the consumer how much we were earning. That's quite a nice situation to be in. Suddenly, they present to us in 1995 the fact that we have to show the consumer an illustration that how we get paid. And back then people were picking up stupid amounts of money for not doing a lot of work. Suddenly to have to reveal that to the consumer is a seismic event. After that, we had the emerging market crisis, which crashed the market, which I think was about 98. You had the dot-com bubble that crashed the market in 2000. Then you had 9/11 in 2001. Again, people forget about that. I remember coming back into London the day after on the tube, and everyone's reading the newspapers with those horrific pictures on the front of the screen. And I'm looking at it thinking, there's absolutely no way the world's going to get over this. But lo and behold, here we are 20 years later. It does move on. But then you throw in the boom and the crash of 2008, and then more regulation, MCD, MMR, and then the pandemic, just to the cherry on the cake.
That's it, yeah.
Listen, it's all about resilience. That's what it boils down to. And I've had friends in the industry that have left a lot of those stages along the way, because for them that was the final nail in the coffin. So, the IFAs use the phrase when it comes to investing, it's don't try and time the market, spend time in the market, and that's the same for a career. The longer you stick at something, even you might be rubbish at the start, and trust me, there was no one more rubbish than me at the start of my career. I'm the only person that left the civil service and took a pay cut. Trust me, that takes a bit of doing, Marcus. But stick with it, and actually celebrate and rejoice in the tough times, because that's really character building stuff. So suddenly, then you become immune to some other obstacles in life and in business that previously would have bothered you, but then just bounce off you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit cliche, isn't it? But like you said, patience and resilience. It's so important. You stick with it.
Absolutely. I don't know. There is that well-known phrase, it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert at something. And that's very, very true. And we've got some new brokers in London Money at the moment. And I do say that to them. And I think, they look at me like I've got two heads. But
also, you're looking at a different generation. And it's people want things faster now. It's just the nature of the beast. But
that's a very valid point.
You've got to be patient.
Absolutely. My very, very first mortgage application was handwritten and hand-delivered to the lender, which I think was Leeds Building Society at the time, and I didn't even get paid on it. That was the start of mortgages, whereby they would allow a broker to deliver an application on behalf of a client, but don't expect us to pay you for the privilege. It took another 3 years after that, maybe 2 or 3 years, for then the payments. The lenders can see the benefit of intermediation, and distribution became very valid and prevalent. I'm not talking about 97.
You think now, like the 90% of mortgages are going through brokers, and then you were working at a time where you had to deliver.
Well, there you go. So listen, we need to understand we are in a very, very good position as a sector. Okay. Yes. The long-term trend was always something like maybe 70-75 in favour of the broker. That probably dipped a bit to 60%, maybe in the credit crunch, when a lot of lenders went direct. A lot of brokers left the industry. There was just no clients around to speak to. That crawled its way back to 75, and the last figure I heard, which I think is well documented, is now 90%. So
it's got up to 90, isn't it? That's a big chunk. But then,
well, look at it this way. This puts it in perspective. We're talking about a £250 billion market, right? Of which we control 90% of it, and there's only 12,000 of us doing it. I think we're in a very, very good position.
Yeah, absolutely. On that point, actually, about there not being a lot of you, you've recruited really well with your TMG brand. I've obviously followed you closely, but what would you give to tips at the moment to people who are looking, from your 1 or 2 man bands to maybe the medium-sized brokers? How do you feel on the recruitment side of things, how it's going, how it's trending, and what you've done with TMG to build those brands?
Yeah, first bit of advice is don't bother doing it.
Yeah, Mark's going.
Yeah, get out while you can. It's really interesting. This is a really interesting point, Marcus, because I think people, I kind of call them the famous fives. Okay, so growing a brokerage from 0 to 5, I don't think that's difficult. I think you can do that. You know, a couple of friends in the industry getting together, you know, a bit of LinkedIn advertising, using a recruitment expert like yourself, suddenly you can be at 5. Great. All right. Then going to 50, right? That's really hard. I see a lot of people do that, and then they do a lot of that. Growing that from 5 onwards into double-digit figures and beyond, very, very, very difficult. It takes another skill set, takes another sort of pivoting and rotation of the business to do that. And then to go from 50 to 500, well, you look around, I mean, you know the industry as well as I do, there aren't many big players in the market, and they certainly don't come out of nowhere overnight and suddenly present themselves as a fait accompli that they've achieved scale to the tune of 500 brokers. So I think the first thing you've got to do is just break down each bit and find out really which one you want to go for. What I would also say is that, with that in mind, is scale yourself first before you scale the business. Okay, that probably makes no sense to you. I can see you frowning. Right?
Yeah,
but what,
I can't hide it, can I? I've just got, you can see
what I mean by that is just decide if you want to do it. Really, don't just do it because someone else is doing it. I see a lot of that in the industry. And if you do want to do it, get yourself ready first. That's half the battle. Don't bring people into the business when you're not ready for them. All right. So scaling yourself first, I think, is really, really important. That's educating yourself along the way, and also making sure you can do the job. That's really important. So I'm still technically on paper a broker. I still speak to clients on a constant basis. I don't do any of the admin. Okay. That I outsource, but I still keep my hand in speaking to clients and lenders, so I know what's going on. And it's important that you do that, because if you're going to start scaling a business, and this is where some big organizations go wrong, they're run by people that have never sat down with a client.
Yeah.
So if I was working there, I'd be thinking, hang on a minute, you're telling me what to do and how to do it, and yet you've never done it yourself. So one good thing that we do have in the Money Group is that, 95% of us have still got some skin in the game. We still speak to clients. We still speak to lenders. We understand what's going on. I think that's important, that you get some scars before you try and recruit, because that will give you more scars going forward. But it will also gain some respect from people. And starting with the end in mind,
it's the respect thing, isn't it? If you haven't done it, it's difficult to get it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't.
You can fall into.
I think anyone, if you're a principal of a firm, whether it's 550 or 500, I think whenever you walk into your office, okay, I think everyone should just sit up, put their backs a little straighter. Do you know what? They have done the job. They can do the job. They know what they're talking about. I think that's important, because if you then want to lead people forward, you want to be doing it using a war analogy. You don't want some kid straight out of Sandhurst. You want that gnarly old sergeant major. Who's been in the trenches for years, who knows what they're doing. I think that's quite important, that people understand that concept, because a bit like broking doesn't end once you've got CMAP. That's just the door opener. Broking starts after you've got CMAP. Same from a recruitment point of view.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, we see a lot as well, and you probably see it, where people, like you just said then, about maybe not having their vision ready. They've just got a few more leads than they used to. So that's it. We need more brokers. We need more people, and that's the wrong time to.
That's not a trigger to start recruiting. Okay, no. Maybe recruit some admin source. Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, it's useful to know you've got leads and like there, but that can't be why your vision is your vision. It's because you're too busy.
No, not at all. I think what people need to decide is if you're going to be a business person or a busy broker. All right. Now, they are mutually exclusive. You cannot do both. Okay. So I do speak to a lot of people. They do run a business. You've got multiple advisors, and they're keying with Barclays, God help them, at 10 o'clock at night, and the system's crashing. That's not business leadership. That really what they're doing there is an admin function. Yeah. And I don't know too many business leaders or principals that do an awful lot of admin.
Yeah.
So just making that mindset change to go, actually, do you know what? And the best thing I did was about 4 years ago, which actually coincided with the growth of TMG, is to let go of all that broking side of stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
Still, first point of call will
The
always
admin
be
side that you're talking about.
look, you could. We don't. So in London Money, we have 10 advisors. We don't have any admin support. So a client comes in, and then I will just work with one of the brokers within the team who I think is actually better suited for that individual client, whether it's a buy-to-let, limited company buy-to-let, first-time buyer, remortgage, whatever it needs to be. We've got enough experience to go, actually, that client will suit that broker. So I delegate the client and the admin to that broker, and we work on a split on the fees.
There's no admin support. There's no one in there.
You don't need admin support. You don't need admin support. You don't need admin support.
I mean, there's two trains of thought in regards to the keying in of stuff. When you could be speaking to clients and you're on hold to lenders, for instance, that kind of thing. Who sits on hold to the lender?
Well, the broker. For me, the broker.
Yeah.
That's part of the job. If they're busy enough that they don't need support from me, then happy days. But
yeah,
the vast majority of brokers, vast majority of brokers do need support, Marcus, because I think the average broker does one mortgage a week in the UK. That's not even a hobby, let alone a career. So, I'd rather them be busy, even if that's just sat on hold to a lender and sat there twiddling their thumbs, and they're learning something all the time. So, I've got a very good broker in London Money, Kathy, who came to me, and her career's been exponential because she took everything I threw at her and worked it, and she's become a brilliant broker off the back of it. And
do you guys have to are they generating leads as well? I know you've got, we'll go through this in a bit more depth in regards to social media strategy, because I think TMG are up there, aren't they? You're nailing it. You've got good people in there covering everything. But do your brokers, do they generate their own business like that as well? Are they trained to do it, or is that kind of an in-house function?
I think we need to raise standards in the industry a lot to stop talking about lead generation. All right. So speaking to a client of mine, he's a partner at a law firm, significant six-figure income. Just talking about his industry and my industry. He went, our industries are very much the same. It doesn't matter who I work for. My clients come to me and they deal with me. And if I went to another law firm, they would just follow me. They don't care about the overarching entity. And that's very similar to our industry. But what he wasn't talking about, when he moves from one law firm to another, he doesn't sit there and go, can you tell me about your lead generation? He doesn't have to, because he's very, very good at his job. Yeah, and I think that's good to top that
people are moving, but if you're looking at the guys who, haven't even been out long enough to recapture their fixed rate guys, they're how they're picking up with clients.
I think I had this goes back to the conversation I had earlier this morning with somebody, and he was spending something like I think he said £70,000 on marketing to generate £120,000 worth of income. Okay, well that makes no sense to me.
No.
He's better off not spending £70,000 and actually just investing more time networking locally or digitally on the platforms. So again, social media for me in the early days was a clipboard and a pen. Yeah. That's what I had to do. It's much better now for brokers, especially new brokers joining. I get the point about if they're new, what do they do? I think
where they start, because if people, it's easy for us. I speak to brokers every day, same as you, so it's easy to go, pick up more business. But I think some of those guys are literally start with they've got their Facebook page, they don't know where to go with it. And
I think what we should be doing here is mentoring better. Okay, there is that element of I've climbed the greasy pole, I'm at the top now. You just do what I did. Well, that doesn't work because everything's changed. I think there's a need to mentor, because what we haven't got in the industry is any proper succession planning for businesses. You look at the average age of a broker; it's probably knocking on the door of 55 or 60. I know a number of brokers at 65 and 70. All right, very good income, but it's such a transactional model. Nobody can get out. So those new guys coming in, they've got all the qualifications and all the skill sets, but not the clients. And yet the old guys have got all the clients, but none of the modern skill sets. They need to put those two things together. And that's a good way to migrate a client bank down the chain and free up some more time from the older advisor to maybe, go down to 2 days a week or give up completely. So I think there's a body of work that can be done there to help new people in the industry, not to the point where you're spending 70 grand a year on lead generation. You don't need that.
No. Would you purchase, someone should ask a question as well actually, but they've asked about purchasing leads, whether you think it's a kind of a waste of time or...
This
is layman's terms. If you can buy a lead for £1 and make £1.50 out of it, then you can still make money. But then it's a time consuming.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I don't want a client that's cost me £1 without being too patronising. That's not really a client. Anyone can data scrape a name and a number off the internet, all right, and say it's an inquiry. I have used unbiased in the past. A few years ago, we had some good results off the back of that. It's been absolutely atrocious ever since. Right. Because the lead generation, going back to lack of knowledge about the industry, a lot of these lead generation companies don't know how we work. So they present us what appears to be a lead. It's barely alive as a human being, let alone a lead. So, I'm loath to spend money up front on this, because actually I think money can be spent much better elsewhere. Be that recruiting existing advisors with their own client bank, some proper digital marketing myself, we could do that. A couple of brands, Chris in Manchester Money, he's had some good results just from his own website, just tweaking a few things on there. But I think we need to move, again, it's a bigger piece of work, move the industry on. The standards have to rise in our industry. Just talking about buying leads for £1, all right, it's probably not true.
But I'll use that as an example, by the way. You can't buy leads for £1.
£10, £20. If we're meant to be a professional, regulated, very important sector of the industry, we shouldn't be talking about that. We should be inundated with referrals and professional connections that there is no need for lead generation.
Yeah. I mean, I speak to brokers who are friends of mine that still have to buy leads every month. They've been brokers for 10 years. It blows my mind as to what they have been doing with their marketing, or just with people that have finished their fixed rate. Like you'd have a if you've been working for 10 years now, you have a full book, wouldn't you, every month? It's impossible not to, as long as they're coming back to you. You're doing something for
it's a good point now, because it was the deep client bank that got the brokers through the credit crunch. Okay. Yeah. It was the deep client bank that got some brokers through that first 3 months of the lockdown, when really it was just about product transfers. Yeah. The difference, I think, it's about marketing. If you treat your client transactionally, guess what's going to happen? Yeah. They're going to treat you transactionally as well. Okay. So, I've got clients going back 20, 25 years. I've got referral chains that have been going that long. I've got professional connections that send me clients all the time. I'm so old, I'm now doing the children of the clients that I helped buy a house 25 years ago. So their children are becoming clients of mine now. That goes back to what I said earlier about sticking in the game, stick with it. Activity is so important. That's one thing I did learn from the early days, that my manager back then, or managers, because it changed every week, my manager back then would say, it's all about do this, do something every minute of every day, and something will happen. And I think that hasn't changed. You can take that into any industry. But I think some people do think, I'll just wait for the phone to ring. And that's very dangerous, because then what happens when it stops ringing? It stopped ringing in 2008, and it stopped ringing in April 2020. Then you're in trouble. Constant. Yeah. And actually, I'd be very concerned now if I was brokers, because the moment that you're at the top of your game and in demand is the time to start planning seriously.
Panic. Not panicking, planning. Yeah, good chat.
Yeah, I'm panicking.
Yeah. Someone asked a question actually. They said, what about network fees in regards to what you're charging, and can someone bring cash from another network? I'm pretty sure you're a competent advisor status.
So I heard cats, as in meow.
Oh, sorry, yeah, competent advisor status. They're cats from another network.
You can bring a cat as well.
Yeah, bring what you like. Yeah, but more importantly, competent advisor status. And that's that can go from network to network, can't it? So I know they're all different, and I know some of them. I mean, I've got an issue with cats that's beyond this, in this that everyone is different. It's got nothing to do about being competent. It's actually, with some, it's about how much business you write. With some, it should be a compliance issue. Actually, we can talk about that if you want. What your opinion on competent advisor status? Because I get quite annoyed with it, just in regard, it's a great way of keeping people stuck in places they don't want to be at. But whether it's about actually being a competent advisor is something, you know, it's everyone's interpretation.
It goes back to what I said at the start about the broker before they decide what they want to do from a recruitment point of view, a career point of view, find out about the industry you're working, all right? Yeah. Because it is, unfortunately, a lot of smoke and mirrors. So this industry, as I said earlier, is still quite young, 20 years old. And I think a lot of infrastructural issues that we had 20 years ago haven't been addressed in the industry, and we're still suffering from them today. This whole thing needs to move on and go up a level. There are a lot of myths around the industry about what you can do, what you can't do, what the regulator's meant to be there for and what they're not meant to do, you know, the benefits of being DA, the benefits of being a network. Honestly, it's exhausting. Most of it is utter rubbish, okay? Most of it is utter rubbish. What do I think of competence status? Well, I think that's a bit of a myth. I mean, this is why standards need to rise. You know, I'm an active broker, and I'm operating off a qualification I passed in 1996. Arguably, am I competent? All right. Well, I am, because I've helped 5,000 people purchase a property of some form over the years, and touch wood, no one's yet made a complaint. I would think that makes me competent. Okay. Could I pass CMAP tomorrow? Not a chance. Absolutely.
Can anyone pass one again just after they've done it?
But then I probably won't pass my driving test tomorrow. It doesn't mean say I can't drive. So I think we need to stop focusing on this stuff, because what it says to me, Marcus, is it gets brought up because it's on somebody else's agenda. All right. Yeah. It's not all, that doesn't make it in the best interest of the client or the broker. All right. That's the bit we need to sort out in the industry. It needs to be a more level playing field. It needs to be fairer, and it needs to be more transparent. The sooner we get to that stage, this will go up a level, and so will all our incomes.
Yeah, and you think that like cash across the board? I'm a big believer in that. It has to be the same for everyone. I don't understand how, if you're in a large estate agency chain, we'll call it, you have to be earning X amount of money to qualify for cash. In others, you have to have 3 files checked. I mean, there's no industry standard there. This doesn't make any sense.
There is no industry standard, and because the industry is so fragmented, we're never going to have an industry standard. Because the sad fact of life is that if you ring the FCA for some guidance, and I try not to beat the FCA up because they've got a tough job. They're very under-resourced.
They're watching, that's right.
Good. Big fan of the regulator. I think they won't give you a yes or no answer. They will refer you to the handbook, and the handbook is just an interpretation of the rules, which is why you get some lenders that will do that with criteria, and another lender will do something completely different because they've just interpreted the rules slightly differently. So there is no red lines or lines in the sand, and if there are, they keep getting moved. So it feels like the broker's probably forever chasing their tail. But again, you know, one thing we do at the Money Group is we take all that stuff away. We just make it transparent. We're very, you know, we don't own the clients, you don't own the clients, off you go. If you want to leave, that's absolutely fine. Same with, you know, the competency status. We've got process and protocols in place, but they're fair. It will be fair to the brokers. What won't be fair to the brokers is probably the existing regime of networks and nationals, who can be very, I think we talked about this briefly, I use it a number of times, I call it the Stockholm Syndrome, where brokers are chained to the radiator, thinking that the person that's feeding them, you know, bread and water is their best friend. Well, you try and leave and just see how popular you are then. And it's got to change. You know, we're here for our clients. That's all we're here for. You know, there should be a conduit to transact business that's transparent and fair for everybody, so long as it does not damage the consumer at the end of the day. And that's got lost. That's got lost over the years in the dash for scale and distribution. That simple message has got lost.
Yeah, very true. Good. All right. Well, let's can we move on to? I know we touched on social media before. I'd love to know your opinion. You are very vocal on social media. I know a lot of companies can't be vocal on social media because they have this network issues of you know, not being able to write what they want when they want, because it's heaven forbid you should say something wrong on social media because they get tracked forever. But what's your opinion on it? How do you see brokers on social media? How should it work in your opinion?
Okay. First off, I love social media and loathe it in equal measure. I think it's important that I get that out of there early on. I think it's a fantastic tool for business. I think personally it's very destructive and probably will wipe out humanity at some point in the future. But anyway, we'll leave that down the road.
That's a bit serious.
I think you look at the divisive nature of society right now, and a lot of that polarization comes out of the instant messaging that you get on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn. So again, in the old days, you could be quite nuanced and go, actually, I want to sit in the middle now, and I've got, I'm not too sure about that. Now you've got to be something or other, vaccinated or unvaccinated, Tory or Labour.
You can't say I've got no opinion on that.
You can't, and it's a shame, and it's forcing that divide. Anyway, I'm digressing. Let's get back to business. So I think from a business point of view, I think it's an essential tool, because it's a very, very noisy world out there, Marcus, and you either get drowned out by it, or you actually sit up and contribute to it to make sure that you get heard. I would argue that a lot of the growth that we've had in the Money Group has come purely from social media. It's just given us that shop window. So it's like owning the whole ground floor of Harrods, and we can do whatever you want in that window. And in the early days, the industry let us do it. Off you go. We're not going to do social media because we're better than that. We're going to send out a newsletter through the post. That was the competition. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So we've piled onto that social media because it was a great platform, and it brought the world very, very close to us. We didn't have to go out.
How long do you think you started your social media strategy? Have you been on it since day dot, like LinkedIn? Because I know of you, but obviously that's my job to be involved in all of mortgage broking, all the brokers out there and what they're doing on social media. So have you done that for years and years, or was that like a conscious, right, this is the time now, we need to do, we need to hit LinkedIn, or we need to have so many touch points with every client? When did you do it?
Day one.
Yeah.
Day one. And I think the secret to it all is doing it when you don't want to do it. Okay, so you look around. I look around. As I said at the start, I'm very nosy. I look around a lot of Twitter. I'm more active on Twitter than I will be on LinkedIn. How many accounts start? Hello world. Here's my Twitter account. Look forward to engaging with you. Last posted in 2012. That's what's the point? Delete your account, move on. So, I've got a foot in both camps about it, but I will constantly tweet regularly, daily. I think I read a stat very early on that you have to engage 20 times a day on a platform to remain relevant. That's how fast moving everything is. So I set my stall out early on to do that, even if I didn't want to do it. Which is why 90% of my tweets are totally inane. I've got absolutely nothing to do with it. Because you've got to do something, but engagement is really important. What I have done, and if some of those brokers listening in want to know the value of doing it, because a lot of them go, I haven't got time to do it. I have generated over £100,000 of income from my tweets. So every time I hit send, I know I'll have made some money. Just £1, all right? Yeah. All right, I'll have to accumulate thousands to get the £1,000 back in, but I know that no tweet that I do, whilst it might not get any engagement, I still know it's got a value to me as a brand, as a business. So there's three brands here. There's me as an individual, and the broker should be thinking of their own individual brand. Who am I? Then I've got my brand at London Money, so I'm promoting London Money regularly on social media. And then you've got the Money Group as an overarching brand. So, there's three brands we have to promote, and it has to be done slightly differently on different platforms. It's not just a one size fits all. I prefer Twitter because it's a little bit more snappy. It's a bit more instant. It was a lot more light-hearted in the early days. It's got a bit.
TikToking yet? Is your brand on TikTok yet?
Well, what I would say to brokers is you've got to choose the platform that mirrors your personality the best.
Right.
Okay, that's really important. If I went on TikTok, it would be a disaster, and I know that. There's no point in me. Well, exactly. You haven't seen me dance, Marcus, and if you did, you'd know better than to ask the question. So, and I can't, and I don't engage too much with LinkedIn because to me, there's a lot of the secret to social media is authenticity. All right.
Yeah.
I think if someone took over my Twitter account, people would know within 2 or 3 tweets it's not me. All right, that's a sign of success that I've got Twitter okay. If someone took over my LinkedIn, you might not know it's me. It might be a social media agency doing it for me. So I think it's important to be authentic, but not to the point of, excuse my language, bullshitting your way to likes and reshares, because I do think that, you know, and I've watched Twitter evolve. I didn't like LinkedIn at the start. I really avoided it, and then I kind of got into it a little bit more and saw the benefit of it. And then lately, it's all teeth, tans, and Teslas. It's people showing off what they've got or who they are. But you know, I would imagine if you scrape beneath the painted on suntan, there's probably not a lot behind it. And me as an individual, as a human being who's obsessed with the human condition, I want to know about actually the failures and the disappointments and the heartaches and the fact that you don't drive a Tesla, you might have a Nissan Micra. I won't judge you on that. I just want
People aren't going to tweet that, are they? People aren't going to tweet it. They're just not.
Well, of course they will do, because we're living in an Instagramification world whereby it has to be, you know, everything. You have to pout wherever you go. Now, luckily for me, I'm not a pouter, so I don't have to change. But I think there is a generation that comes through that it's all very image conscious, and it has to be expensive or the latest this or the, you know, that's fine, but not if it's fake. And a lot of time it is fake. So a lot of the success that you see on these platforms, they're being funded by bounce back loans from last year. You know, if you want to know how successful people are, pop onto Company's House. You know, that'll be your best friend. All the information will be on there. That's the reality. So, you know, just again, going back to being nosy, have a poke around. Don't take it all on face value, because it doesn't exist in the real world.
So if I'm a new broker, for instance, and I want to start my social media, obviously authenticity, like you say, persistence, or, you know, much the same as we said about staying in the industry. It's still the same. It's still persistence, resilience. Where do they start sort of aiming at? You know, like you got, I mean, you were aiming at brokers, I suppose, so on the TMG brand, so it's a little bit different, like you're saying as myself. But people who want the mortgage, so.
So this year we kind of made a conscious decision to be the most talked about brand in the industry, and I think we did that, which is that getting out of that dirty air and getting into some clean air for the brand. That was really important for us to do that. So we had to make a little noise on that, and we did that very successfully on social media. We actively encourage all our brands and our brand directors and any of our ARs to be very vocal and visible on social media, because it will help them individually. It will help them as a business, and it will help us as a group. I don't think there was necessarily a conscious strategy other than being yourself and talking about what you're doing, and showing that human side, because we are moving into a cult of personality society at the moment, whereby it's not so much about all those big organisations with grey suits. It's actually a little bit more human and relatable and real. So where does someone start? Well, you've got to start somewhere, and the first thing you do is you get out of your comfort zone. Okay, that's what stops most people engaging with social media. So I'm not going to do TikTok, because for me, I'm out of my comfort zone. All right, I can knock it out of the park all day long on Twitter, and arguably too much, but that's my model. But you've got to start somewhere. You've got to find that platform. Actually, that's my voice, and I'm comfortable with that. And you've got to be brave and go, look, I'm here. Here I am. You know, stop me. This is a free world. You know, all these platforms are there for a reason. As long as you moderate your language, as long as you moderate your message, as long as you don't become divisive, as long as you don't start taking a position on racism, sexism, and all that stuff everyone's fighting over right now, and keep your brand as clean and fair as possible. Just kick a few doors in. That's what I'd be doing. I'd be kicking a few doors in. Go, I'm here. I've got an opinion. It's about my industry, and I'm quite happy to share it with you, as long as you then also take on board other people's opinions, because the fights will start if you can't accept somebody else's opinion.
So you just, I mean, I've seen people be really successful, especially with TikTok. I've seen a few protection advisors and a couple of mortgage advisors who have been really successful at it. But I suppose you only see those, but they work at it like anything, I suppose, like any other marketing strategy. You've got to work at it. They're on it every day to get it done, and I know they're making money from it. So.
Correct. That's like the professional gambler that will only ever show you the winning betting stocks.
The winnings,
All right. So there's a reason that you only see them. Well, that's the winning betting slip. They're doing really well. You don't see the other ones because they've given up, or they've been intimidated off because they don't think I can compete with that person, or they got lazy with it, or they didn't commit to it. I mean, that's important. You either commit or quit is a really important thing in business, whether that's growing it or writing business or being on social media. Once you've crossed over that event horizon, you've got to go with it. You've got to stick with it, even if you don't want to do it.
Yeah, I'm saying. I mean, I don't know how you are on it. You have to be out of your comfort zone, I think, with that side of things. I'm not overly candid about sharing like family stuff on there. I don't think it's relevant, but I'm probably a bit of a dinosaur on there because actually it does. I don't think people are offended by it anymore. I think people will want to get rid of those LinkedIn police type people who love to moan about people sharing personal stuff. But
that's a tricky one. I don't reveal personal information only because the Twitter account is for me as a person. It's not about my family or my friends or anything like that. You've got to I think it's important to have a separation as well.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind that we've gone from, 9 to 5, not working at the weekends, no messages after 6 p.m. to suddenly now, because of these things, you're never off it. Everything's been thrown into the pot and mixed up. And I think sometimes it's important to have that separation that actually I've got a personal life, I've got a private life, I've got a family, that's over there. If they want to go on TikTok, they're more than welcome to do so, but I'm not going to do it on their behalf. So I think I'm with you on that one. I think sometimes it's good to have
fine line, isn't it? So I don't not enjoy other people's stuff on that. I'm a bit dubious. So I just, maybe it's an age thing. I just
Well, maybe just a private individual, Mark. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. I suppose. Yeah. Right. So I mean, we haven't got long left. We've got 7 minutes. So I want to get through. There are a few questions that people have tucked in the middle. I'm trying to add them in as we go. So I haven't missed too many, but if we do, but what I want to get as well, if we can you give us top tips? So a top tip for any new broker or anyone looking to start out now. Don't say don't do it. That can't be a top tip. If they're looking to start the business, or if they're already qualified, they're already earning, and they go, right, I want to be the next Martin. I want to have that sort of business.
Don't do that either.
Not the next. You can't say.
It would boil down to. I mean, there's loads I can say about it. It's different because if you want to recruit, let's say you want to grow, we've got a saying that the first one is always the worst one. Okay, because you're so desperate for success, you will take anything on board, anything and anyone, literally, and that can sometimes be a mistake.
My clients don't do that. They only take on the best.
I'm sure hard to disagree with the Marcus, but I think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit brokers out there. This goes back to raising standards again. That the nomads, they're looking for a home to do that one mortgage a week. All right, and from an ego point of view, it's great to have that person because that suddenly you've doubled in size overnight. You've got head count. Someone else to go on the website. But the reality is, nursing that broker is going to actually drain your time and your business. Correct. So I think sometimes it's important just to be tough with that first one and don't play the numbers game. I've done that in the past, played the numbers game. It doesn't work. Effectively,
we say a similar thing to people when, I'm not going to bang on about recruitment because obviously that's my bag, but people don't want to do it. And I always say to them, like, it's probably more important to people that I wouldn't recommend to than people I would, because if you can stick an advert somewhere and you can do that, and I can tell you the 10 people that apply, but if it's going to be a problem for you, if you're not really willing to sort of slow down at the beginning, find out exactly what you want, then you're going to struggle a little bit later because you're going to get those ones. Like you say, you're going to get the ones that have been in the industry a while, or what are content with their 2 mortgages a month and that kind of thing, and that's not going to grow your business. So
that's not good for the industry. It's not good for the industry. No. Look, what we need to do now. Sorry, I'm not answering any of the questions, but what we need to do now is move our sector on in the same way the IFA moved their sector on in 2012. They had the what did they call it? MMR. They had the review, not MMR. Can't remember.
RDR.
RDR. They had a massive kind of cultural change about how they operate, about how they get paid, about qualifications, about minimum standards, all that kind of stuff. I'm not saying it's perfect now, but I look at some of these guys. I still know lots of them. They are now chartered. They're now certified. Where solicitor accounts like that, they're now up there with them. All right. They pulled away from us, and in the old days we were two sides of the same coin, but we've lost that now, and we could do with catching them up a little bit.
I suppose that going through that RDR stuff as well for them also got rid of those. Got rid of the driftwood, got rid of the the plodding, that kind of thing. So,
well, I think there's a 25% cull that you could have in our sector now, and I don't think it would be detrimental to the industry.
It's a hard one to take when it's so hard. It's such a candidate-driven market from a recruitment perspective at the moment, but there is also so much dross. It's a very difficult.
Well, you see it. You probably see a lot more.
Yeah, we see it day in, day out. That's when we like speaking to them. It's
yeah. Well, I think we've given evolution too long in our sector. I think it's time for a bit of a little revolution. I think there's a lot we can do. The brokers, in the main, are very, very good. I just think we're stuck in a rut and have been for 20 years. And I think it'll be time to evolve that on and change it. Yeah.
No, I agree. So there's a couple of, people are talking about personal brand as well as like a business brand and how you stand out. We touched on that already, haven't we, in regards to...
We have. What if I could just add something quickly into that? That yes, personal brand's important, and you could be a very, very successful one-man band. Absolutely, don't ever rule that out. And I know a number of people that are like that. If you want to grow into a multiple advisor firm, you've got to think expansively, not restrictively. Okay, and what I mean by that is don't name your business after yourself. All right.
Yeah, I know you're a believer now. I've had this conversation before. You can't be Dave's Mortgages and grow to 10 people.
You cannot be Dave's Mortgages. Correct. So again, this goes back to what we said at the start about deciding what you want. Scale yourself up first mentally. What do I want to achieve? Bigger brand, more a broader church of people to speak to. Yeah, Dave's Mortgages ain't going to rock that boat. But coming up with something snazzy, the Money Group gives us a huge playing field, because there's nothing that you can't really add the word money to have instant brand value, in our opinion. So thinking like that is really important.
You've grown.
Yeah, I think it has worked, and we can also diversify this out. We don't have to keep it to mortgages. There's nothing that we can't add the word money. It's a bit like Stelios and his easy. He's added easy to everything, and we've just added money to everything. So that to me is quite exciting. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning. But how big, how much can we grow that? Where can we grow in that? So again, just speaking to brokers listening in, have that mentality. How big can I make it? Start with the end in mind.
If they're going for that vision of, because like you say, not everyone has to have loads of people working for them. If you want to be Dave Mortgages and you want to do is Dave sell your mortgages for the rest of your life, and that's your big vision, then you don't have to add to it. But establishing that vision initially, obviously, is the key.
The problem with one-man bands is, and this is where we have to be careful, that if we do rotate this industry on going forward, commercially, smaller one-man banding might not be the trigger for lenders or the regulator going forward. If you think that there might be 3,000 or 4,000 one-man bands out there, commercially from a lending point of view, don't really appear on their radar.
It already happens, doesn't it? It depends on, if you're not with...
So this is why I think consolidation is really important in our sector. I do think that's really important. I think time is... I think the way the industry is going, it's probably time to try and find a way to clump brokers together, to be more visible to the lender and more accountable to the regulator.
So do you agree with, I know we're going to run over now, but do you, in regards to kind of networks then, because that is a network, that's a network issue, clumping people together. There's also issues with networks in regards to the amount of fees they get, what people get for their money, what brokers have, So you want to come people together to have that people power, but at the same time, I know you've got personal opinions on how networks work and how they should work for brokers.
I've got an opinion. Yeah, I mean it suits 55% of the industry. I'm never going to change my mind on that. I'm not going to persuade someone to do something that doesn't suit their personality. And some networks might be slightly better than others. I'm not going to live long enough to finish that debate. I think what it boils down to me is just transparency and fairness. I think that's the missing link in our industry because of how it was set up 20 years ago in haste. And arguably, I would suggest that I'm still doing the job in the same way 20 years later.
Yeah.
Right? The only thing that's changed is that collectively we spent £100 million and come up with an online fact find. Other than that, I'm getting paid the same way, and I'm transacting with the lenders the same way, and I'm ticking the same boxes. I think it's time for change.
Yeah, good shout. Oh, that's a good way to leave it as well, actually, Martin. We've run over. What I can say is, I mean, I really appreciate everyone. I'm grateful for everyone coming on and listening to what we've got to say. If I've missed any questions, I'm going to go through it afterwards, and I'm going to get some response to Martin as well. So that's right with you, because I don't want anyone to miss out on any opportunity. But yeah, I really appreciate that, Martin. That was really good. And you got anything to add on that? Hopefully everyone got something from it. There's something, I think, there for everyone, especially if you haven't been in the industry that long. You know, it just makes sense to listen. And I would soak these up like a sponge. It's my only bit of advice to people, because there's so much you don't know what you don't know yet.
I've forgotten more than everyone else can remember. That's how long I've been around. What I will say, just in closing, is that if anybody wants to have a chat with me or sound anything off, I've got no problem doing that. You know, if they want some guidance or anything like that, I mean, as I said at the start, you need to be looking for that gnarly sergeant major that's been around a little bit. If you want some selling myself here, aren't I? But if you really want, if you want that unbiased opinion about the industry, okay, I've got strong opinions on both sides of DA and network, and I'll tell you honestly what I think.
Amazing. All right, good stuff. Well, I'll leave it with that then. And yeah, like I said, I'll respond to any questions. If anyone's got anything in the meantime, please get in contact, and I will see you soon.
Thanks, Marcus.
Thank you.